I still remember the sound of the fork clinking against Dad's plate the moment I told him I was gay. It was a Tuesday night. Ordinary in every way. Mom had made meatloaf, the same way she always did, ketchup glaze, mashed potatoes on the side, green beans no one really liked but ate out of routine. We sat around the dining table like we always did, Dad at the head, Mom to his right, me across from her. The TV in the living room was on low volume, muttering something about a sports game none of us were really watching. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. I hadn't eaten a bite, though I'd pushed the food around enough to make it look like I had. My hands were clammy. My throat was dry. I had rehearsed the words for weeks. In the shower. On my walk home from school. In the mirror. But they still felt like glass shards in my mouth. I have to tell you something, I said. They both looked up. Dad raised an eyebrow. Mom paused, fork halfway to her mouth. I swallowed. I'm gay. For a second, it didn't seem like they understood. My mom blinked. My dad didn't move. Then, that fork clinked as it touched his plate. He set it down, wiped his mouth with the napkin as if nothing had happened, then stood up slowly. My chest tightened. I couldn't read his face, it was blank. Not angry. Not shocked. Just, cold. Mechanical. Get out, he said. I froze. What? You heard me. His voice was even. Dead calm. Pack your things and go. Are you serious? I could barely hear my own voice. Dad, I'm still. You're not my son. His words were flat, final. Mom sat in stunned silence. Her mouth moved as if to say something, but no sound came out. She just stared at the table. I looked to her for help, for anything, an objection, a protest, even a whisper, but her silence was worse than Dad's anger could have been. I wanted to scream. To cry. To break something. Instead, I stood. My legs were shaking, but I moved. Slowly, numbly, like I wasn't really inside my body. I went upstairs. I didn't even know what to pack. My hands moved on their own, some jeans, a hoodie, my journal, a picture of my dog, a few crumpled dollars from a drawer. My room still smelled like the cologne sample I'd rubbed into my wrists weeks before. Like home. That was the worst part. I didn't get to hate this place. I loved it. And I was being erased from it. When I came downstairs, Mom was still sitting at the table. Her food was cold. She didn't look at me. Dad stood at the door, holding it open like a hotel porter. No emotion. No hesitation. It was freezing outside. The wind cut through my sweatshirt like paper. I didn't even have gloves. I stepped outside. He didn't follow me. The door clicked shut behind me. No goodbye. No, be safe. No, we'll talk later. Just, nothing. I walked until I couldn't feel my toes. I ended up sitting on a bench outside the 24-hour laundromat. My breath came in little clouds. My stomach ached, not just from hunger but from the weight of everything crashing down at once. That night, I wasn't thinking about the future. I wasn't thinking about survival or resilience or becoming a stronger version of myself. I wasn't thinking about how I'd look back on this day 15 years later. I was thinking about how much it hurt to be told you didn't belong by the people who were supposed to love you no matter what. It wasn't just rejection. It was exile that I didn't sleep that first night. The bench outside the laundromat was cold and hard, and the light buzzing overhead flickered just enough to keep me from ever fully closing my eyes. Every sound, cars passing, a dog barking, the occasional burst of laughter from late-night strangers, made me flinch. I pulled my hoodie tighter around me and curled into myself like a question mark, wondering what I was supposed to do now. Where do you go when the people who raised you suddenly pretend you don't exist? In the morning, I walked. Not toward anywhere in particular, just away. Away from the house I once called home. Away from the front door that had closed behind me like a tomb. I walked until my feet ached, then kept walking. By late afternoon, I found a shelter downtown that had beds for runaway youth. They didn't ask too many questions, and I was too numb to offer any answers. The next few weeks were a blur. Waking up to the sound of coughing and babies crying. Standing in lines for food that tasted like wet cardboard but filled my stomach. Searching bulletin boards for part-time jobs. Looking for places I could sit without being asked to leave. Everything I owned fit in a backpack. The clothes I had were the clothes I wore. I washed them in bathroom sinks when I could. I learned to sleep with one eye open, to keep my back against the wall, and to never trust a smile that came too easily. But I also learned something else, something unexpected. I learned that strangers could be kind. That people who had nothing would still share their last granola bar or point you toward a warm place to sit. I met Tasha, a trans woman who had been on the streets for years. She took one look at me, skinny, scared, shivering, and handed me her extra scarf without a word. We didn't talk much, but that scarf was like armor. It smelled like lavender and tobacco and something human. Eventually, I got a job bussing tables at a diner. The owner, Frank, was gruff but fair. He didn't care where I lived, only that I showed up on time and didn't steal the silverware. I worked late nights, scraping ketchup off plates and sweeping crumbs from under booths. The pay was awful, but it meant I didn't have to beg. I saved every dollar I could. Skipped meals to stretch tips. Slept in the stock room sometimes when Frank wasn't looking. By the time I was 18, I managed to enroll in community college. It took everything I had. I applied for every grant, every scholarship, lied on forms when I had to. I studied by day, worked by night, and lived in a cramped apartment with two other guys I barely knew. We took turns paying for toilet paper and shared one space heater. Winter was brutal, but it was still better than that bench. I majored in social work. It felt like a calling, not a choice. I couldn't forget the kids I met on the streets, the ones younger than me, lost and hurting, so many with stories like mine. I wanted to be the person I didn't have back then. The one who says, "You matter. You're not broken. You deserve to be loved." As the years passed, I built a life. Brick by brick. I got a steady job at a nonprofit that helped LGBTQ+ youth. I started leading group therapy. I found an apartment of my own, tiny, but mine. There were plants on the windowsill. Photos on the fridge. A bookshelf crammed with paperbacks rescued from thrift stores. I had friends who became my family. Birthdays with cake. Holidays that didn't feel hollow. I learned to laugh again, to let people in, even if it was slow and cautious. Still, no matter how far I came, some things stayed quiet in the back of my mind. Every birthday, I checked my phone, even though I told myself not to. Every time I saw a father and son at the park or a family sitting together at a diner, some part of me ached. Not angry. Not bitter. Just a small, persistent longing that never quite left. That it was a rainy Thursday evening, one of those cold spring days that can't decide if it wants to be winter or something warmer. I had just finished washing the dinner dishes, the kind of small, quiet ritual that marked the end of my workday. The kitchen window was fogged with steam, the scent of leftover garlic and basil still lingering in the air. Outside, the city looked washed out and gray, puddles forming under the flickering street lamp that always buzzed a little too loudly. I had no plans that night. I rarely did. My life was peaceful now, structured. I liked it that way. I curled up with a book, a soft blanket pulled over my knees, and some jazz playing low in the background. That's when I heard the knock. It wasn't loud, but it was sharp. 3 knocks. Deliberate. Not the kind of knock you get from a neighbor needing sugar or a delivery guy with the wrong address. I paused, heart skipping a beat. It was late for visitors. Too late for anything casual. I walked to the door, barefoot, cautious. Through the peephole, all I could see at first was a dark blur. Then I opened it. My father was standing there. I didn't recognize him at first. His hair was thinner, almost fully gray now, and he looked smaller somehow, older, yes, but also, diminished. His face was drawn tight, eyes bloodshot like he hadn't slept in days. Rain clung to the collar of his coat, and he held his hat in his hands like he didn't know what to do with them. Behind him stood my mother. Her hair was pulled back, the same way she used to wear it when she cooked dinner, but there was no warmth in her expression now. Just nerves. A tremble in her chin, a weariness in her eyes. And then there was a boy. He couldn't have been more than 15. Skinny, pale, with messy brown hair that curled around his ears and deep-set eyes too old for his age. He wore a zip-up hoodie, one sleeve stretched at the cuff where he'd probably been pulling it down out of habit. He looked a lot like me. That realization hit like a sudden gust of wind, sharp, unexpected. "Eli," my father said. My name. The sound of it in his voice after so many years made something in me recoil and ache at the same time. I didn't respond. Just stared. He cleared his throat. "This is your brother. His name is Noah." Noah looked up at me, trying to meet my eyes, then looked down again quickly. He clutched the straps of his backpack with both hands. My father took a shaky breath. "He told us last week that he's gay." The words hung in the air like smoke. He continued, voice cracking. I didn't handle it well. At first. But then your mother said," he glanced at her, unsure. "She said we couldn't lose him the way we lost you." I still hadn't spoken. I wasn't sure I could. My chest felt tight, my thoughts spinning too fast to catch. "I know I don't deserve anything from you," he said, quietly. "But Noah, he asked to meet you. He wanted to meet you." My mother finally spoke, her voice hoarse. "He's scared. We all are. We didn't know where else to go." Noah shifted slightly, peeking up at me again. His eyes were wide, unsure, a storm of fear and hope behind them. The rain kept falling, soft and steady, pooling at their feet. My hallway light cast a warm glow that barely reached where they stood, as if the threshold of my door marked some kind of invisible line between two worlds. For a moment, no one said anything. Just the sound of the city breathing outside. And the quiet, impossible weight of 15 years pressing into the space between us. I stepped aside without saying a word, and they entered like ghosts crossing into the light. My father moved first, awkwardly wiping his shoes on the mat like he remembered being told to once, years ago. My mother followed, clutching her purse in front of her like a shield. And then Noah, who looked around with curious, cautious eyes, as if each corner of my apartment might tell him something about the brother he'd never met. It was quiet, the way it gets when emotions are too big to be spoken right away. I gestured toward the couch, and they sat, stiff and uncomfortable, like people in a waiting room with news they weren't ready to hear. I sat across from them in the old armchair I'd bought secondhand during grad school. I liked that chair. It held me through nights of studying, heartbreak, and exhaustion. It had survived more than I had any right to expect. Noah sat on the edge of the couch, his backpack still slung over his shoulder like he might bolt at any moment. His legs bounced nervously, but he kept sneaking glances at me. I could tell he was trying to find the resemblance, to stitch me into the patchwork of stories he'd probably only heard in whispers. "So," I said finally, the word brittle in my throat. My dad leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped. "I've spent years, trying to justify what I did. Telling myself I did it because I was scared, or confused, or that I thought I was doing what was best." He looked down. But the truth is, I was just a coward. I was more afraid of what people would think than I was of losing you. The words didn't hit me the way I thought they would. Maybe because I'd said them to myself 1,000 times already. Maybe because I'd imagined this conversation so many different ways, and none of them ended with him actually showing up. My mom spoke next, her voice quieter, but just as cracked. I wanted to call you so many times. I would sit with the phone in my hand, just, frozen. Your father, he wouldn't talk about you. And I was scared of what might happen if I did. I was scared of losing him, too. But I know now I lost you anyway. I looked at her, and then at him. Their faces were older, but not so different. Worn down by time and guilt. There was no drama in their voices, no over-the-top tears or grand apologies. Just fatigue. Regret. And something that looked like hope if you squinted hard enough. Noah cleared his throat. I read about you, he said. I found your name online. The work you do. He looked down at his shoes. You help kids like me. Like you. That cracked something in me. I hadn't cried in years, not real tears, but something in that moment clawed its way to the surface. I swallowed hard, forcing it back down. I didn't think I'd ever meet you, he added, almost in a whisper. I studied him. I saw the fear I used to carry. The way his eyes darted, scanning for danger. The way his hands clenched when he talked. But I also saw strength. The kind that survives long nights and silent dinners. The kind that doesn't give up, even when the people around you do. There was a long pause. My father opened his mouth to say something else, but I raised a hand. Not to stop him in anger, just to pause the flood. I don't forgive you because it's easy, I said. And I'm not doing it just because you're here. Forgiveness isn't a switch I can flip. It's not a performance. They both nodded, eyes brimming with understanding or at least the attempt to understand. I'm doing it, I continued, slowly, because I've spent 15 years learning how to live without hate. And I refuse to start carrying it again. The room was still. Not uncomfortable now, but quiet in a way that felt full. Like everyone could finally exhale. My father let out a breath he might have been holding since the moment I opened the door. My mother reached over and rested her hand gently on Noah's arm. He didn't flinch. I stood up and walked into the kitchen. I didn't ask if they were hungry. I just started pulling things out of the fridge. Leftover soup. Some bread. The kind of things you share with people when you don't know what else to give them except warmth. The soup simmered gently on the stove, its scent warming the air like a memory from another lifetime. I ladled it into mismatched bowls, 2 chipped, 1 new, and set them down with quiet care. My father watched me, his eyes heavy but soft, and my mother ran her fingers along the edge of the spoon like she needed something to hold on to. Noah was the only one who dug in right away, and I was glad. Teenagers should eat without hesitation. I sat across from them again, my hands wrapped around my own bowl, letting the heat soak into my fingers. The silence between us wasn't sharp now. It was thick, almost necessary, as if we were all waiting for the words to catch up with the moment. My father cleared his throat, then looked down. I've thought about this for so long, he said. What I'd say if I ever saw you again. I rehearsed apologies, wrote letters I never sent. But none of it felt like enough. It's not, I said, quietly. Not out of cruelty. Just honesty. It won't ever be enough. That's the cost. He nodded slowly. I know. My mother spoke next, barely above a whisper. We hurt you. And then we disappeared. You didn't deserve that. You never did. She paused, her lip trembling, and I saw her eyes move around my apartment, the little signs of my life here. The framed photo of my college graduation. The shelf filled with worn paperbacks. A coffee mug with chipped paint, resting beside the sink. I kept thinking about what I would have done if it had been me, she continued. If someone had pushed me out of my home at 16 and left me to survive alone. I don't know if I would have made it. I stirred my soup slowly. Some days, I didn't think I would either. Noah looked up then, spoon halfway to his mouth. But you did, he said, voice firm, his eyes locked on mine. That moment struck deeper than I expected. This boy, this brother I'd never known, was sitting in my kitchen, watching me like I was something worth becoming. Like I had walked through fire and come out whole, even though I hadn't. Not really. But maybe wholeness wasn't the point. That I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling for a second, trying to steady myself. Forgiveness wasn't a feeling that washed over me like some holy warmth. It wasn't clean. It wasn't simple. It was jagged, slow, and it shifted every time I thought I understood it. I've spent years building a life without you, I said. Years learning how to be okay, how to trust people again. And it's been hard. Every time I let someone get close, there's this part of me that still waits for the door to slam shut. That still hears his voice telling me to get out. My father closed his eyes, a tear slipping free. It made him look older, more human. But I'm here, I continued. Not because I'm trying to erase what happened. I can't. I won't. I'm here because I believe in something better. Not perfect, but better. My mother reached for my hand across the table. Her fingers were cold, hesitant. I let her hold it. Just for a moment. Noah watched us silently, his gaze darting between our faces like he was trying to understand the rules of a language he hadn't yet learned. I saw him shifting, shoulders lowering, breath deepening. Hope rising. Outside, the rain had stopped. The streetlights shone on the slick pavement, casting long reflections like streaks of gold reaching into the night. Inside, the warmth of soup and human presence softened the sharp edges of the past. The air didn't feel quite so heavy anymore. The walls of my apartment, which had so long felt like shelter from a world that turned me out, now felt more like a place where something new might begin.